Welcome back to the Raven Chronicles with Muninn and Huginn. Today we are episode 3, and we're going to talk about personal responsibility. And John does not know what the topic is, so he's going in cold. And we didn't really prepare for this one, so I think we're just going to go kind of Old West style and shoot from the hip.
All right. I was not expecting this one. Let's go with this first thing and foremost. And I like it.
Yeah, personal
Accountability is a big thing.
responsibility.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think it's first thing first, it has to be a value, right? And not in the uniform we wore before, but in general, right? And everywhere, it's a humongous quality value that people should have. But it feels that, or it's my feeling. I feel that more and more when we look at society, people walks away from it.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
right. And they
I think
find,
there's a whole host of reasons for that, John. And that's why I think this is such a cool subject because personal responsibility is it's hard to swallow, man. It's hard. People don't even understand what personal responsibility means because they immediately think of blame and guilt, right?
Mhm.
And
But
so they,
technically the blame and the feeling, this is where people, okay, so I don't know about you kids, but I'll throw that out, and I'm not gonna go outside of the path too far. But
yeah,
I have one thing that I have to say, and it's all I teach my kids about how to talk to people, right? And the reason why I'm saying this is you cannot hurt people with words, right? It's what people think or feel towards the words that will make them feel something, right?
yeah, that's right. Yeah,
So technically, I could say you are this, and that. Now, if you feel that it's what you are, and you decide that in your own time to put yourself down, degrade yourself with those thoughts that I said, because a thought has no feelings to it. It's just thought, right?
right. Yeah,
And it's the same with accountability, right? Accountability is, did you do this? Yes or no? It's a yes or no question. There's no feeling, right? Or taking responsibility of, right? So let's say I have a collision, right? And it's my fault. Well, I gonna go with it, right? I will own it.
yeah.
Now, what we see quite often in our society nowadays, and I mean, we have TV shows with it, where they go to court and they fight, right? They just don't want to spend the money. It's not my fault. They show up there. Well, the car doesn't appear, right? There's no
Hmm.
teleporter from what I know, right? So why don't we just say, yeah, okay, well, I think society brought it so bad we created jobs that way, right? Like we have posts here, big signs on the side of the highway saying, you don't want to pay your tickets, hire me, right? And if I don't
Mm,
win, it's going to be free for you, right?
yeah,
But technically, and I don't know how it works where you are at, if here we show up in court, they will, because you're missing time at work, they see it as you pay a fee already by not showing up at work. So they cut down half your tickets as an
oh yeah.
example.
They feel sorry for the person.
Yeah. And I mean, I think every cup has their own flavor. Personally, it was the cell phone aspect. I've seen countless kids being hit because people driving with their cell phone, and we're not allowed here. And so if I would see them, I would pull them over, give a ticket, and so on, carry on. They would have every reason in the world. Every reason in the world. I'm talking to my son. Yes, ma'am, but you have a 2020, whatever, GMC where you have the Bluetooth in it. Yes, but it's just easier to hold my phone. Well, you hold nothing if the car talks for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Stop finding a reason. And I think, and this is what I've seen most of the time, is if you man up, or if you just agree it's your fault, it was your action that you've done, period, I would walk away from giving you a ticket because you own to it. But if
yeah,
you're fighting me for it, blows my mind. Now it's everything, it's everywhere the same. I'm giving you an example as a ticket, could be speeding, could be whatever, maybe. But in your personal relationship, it's the same. You do something wrong, you say it, right? Yeah, you're
yeah.
right. I've disrespected you, right? I should not have done this or that and whatnot. But we're lacking of this. Is it like where? And I say fail. I don't think it's a fail, but where did we walk wrong? And that's my question.
Mm,
Where did we walk wrong for having now a society where most of them are saying, like, I don't want to do this, right? I don't want to, like, it's not my fault. It's not my fault. Did we stop teaching that to the kids? Did we,
I don't know.
like, it's very interesting. Or I mean, you look at teaching now, right? Teacher, my wife used to be a teacher, and she would have and I remember like it was yesterday. There's a kid, I don't remember his name. Kid would throw a chair in the class across the class, and the kids in the class had been so they worked around it. They knew that they had to go and hide under their desk. So
Really?
everyone, when he would blew out, right? They would hide under their desk until he cooled down. And the teacher are not allowed to go hands on anymore, right? They're not allowed to touch the kids. And the parents said, "Well, it's a boy. That's what boys do." I don't know for you, but I remember that if I would have done that in my high school, my elementary school, the nun would have kicked my ass, or the priest. I
Yeah.
would have known that it's wrong. And now you have parents where, well, it's a kid, it's my kid doesn't do wrong. Like, are we blinding ourselves about what is wrong and right? Are we blinding ourselves that our little kid is not that great, or not that perfect, or do we not want to see the wrongs? And that's avoidance. And I think that might be it. Like, we're avoiding, like we talk, you and I, about PTSD and avoidance, right? It's
Hmm.
hard to take responsibility of what we created, right? And I
Yeah.
think that mental health is a big part of it. We have created, and I will always say that it's not my job who gave me PTSD. It's myself, because
Hmm.
I should have went and asked for help 15 years ago.
Yeah.
I should have went and not think I'll be like everyone else, think that I'm okay. And because Brian and Peter and Bozo are totally fine, and they keep working like there's no change in the world for them. So if, I think the guilt and the shame we talk about is the aftermath. It's when you realize that you should have taken responsibility of what you've done. Now you feel bad. So the
Yeah.
shame and the guilt kicks in, the sadness, right? Because I think sadness englobes the shame and guilt. Um, for you, what is it for you? That's, I guess, that's for me what accountability is. But what is it for you?
Well, for me, personal responsibility is, well, it's really a multifaceted kind of ethic to live by. So you started off kind of using the example of your child,
Mhm.
and I think you're saying you're trying to teach your child to be responsible for their actions and the things they say, right?
Yep.
And then you evolved it into, like, why does it seem like society walks away from accountability and from personal responsibility?
Yep.
And then, just to carry the flow, then it kind of morphed into like being responsible for your illness, being responsible
Mhm.
for trauma, being responsible for what happened to you.
Yep.
So I want to start there because that was the thing that started me thinking about personal responsibility almost for the first time in my life. When I found myself really sick, the first step I finally took was admitting to my family doctor that I, had been experiencing this myriad of symptoms that I knew was not good, but hiding them for years and years and years.
Yep.
And that took a massive amount of energy, but at the same time, it finally felt like a big load off. And then it kicked into it. I realized something.
Mhm.
Personal responsibility is like putting the freaking weight down. Imagine you're on a ruck, just,
Yep.
because you're a military guy
Yep.
and you've got 150 pounds in your pack. Well, every time you offload something, it feels lighter. Feels easier to walk.
Mhm.
And when the little personal responsibility like light bulb went off in my mind, that's what it felt like. It felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders, pardon the cliche proverb there. So I hadn't really ever thought of it before. And then I started to talk to a psychologist, and I got into that, and I started asking him about this and talking about personal responsibility. And that for so long, I just pointed the finger at everybody. And I just sat there and I blamed and I put all of the symptoms into this feeling like somebody was guilty of hurting me and that they were the ones that would be responsible for fixing me. Like, you need to do something. My employer needs to do something about my sickness. The people that I feel wronged me need to do something about me. And I quickly realized that's never going to come.
No.
That's never going to happen. You're if you've been victimized by some people in your life, and we all are, we're all victimized in some way by somebody sometime in our life. Most of the time, you're not getting an apology.
Yeah.
Right. Most of the time, there's never going to be forgiveness, a two-way mutual transactional forgiveness between somebody who was victimized and somebody who was harmed, or the accuser. And so kind of step two in that was me realizing that no matter how angry I was at what I perceived as the things that harmed me or the people that were harming me because of the way they were treating me, it didn't matter. It didn't matter at all. They weren't going to come to therapy with me and hug it out. You know, we weren't going to do the whole sing kumbaya and then things would get better. They didn't care. And
Yep.
that's just the way the world is. There's very few people who honestly care about other people other than their immediate family and some of their friends. You know, you can't care about everybody.
No.
So step two in personal responsibility was realizing that I had to be the tip of my own spear as far as healing and getting better from mental health trauma, because there was only like a few people that were going to really be at my side. A few of my close friends, my wife, who has always been there for 24 hours, and a therapist who I've got a really good relationship with. And that's it. And me.
Yeah.
And if I'm not part of that equation, well, everybody's going to eventually walk away, because we all know that if you try to get help and people try to help you and you don't accept the help, eventually they stop offering help.
Yep.
And quite honestly, that's what you have to do. It's a self-preservation tool for those that are offering help. You can't just keep offering help to somebody who doesn't accept it, right? That's a tangent. But so that was kind of step two, was realizing that it didn't matter what happened to me. Nobody was coming to say sorry and fix me. It was just my duty, my responsibility to fix me. And then the next evolution of that was, as I was beginning to finally accept the healing process and go through it and take responsibility for making sure I made it to therapy and making sure I did all the things I needed to do in order to try and get better. And I still do them every day. There's a list of things I do to stay well. And not doing them causes me to start slipping again because I'm just not there. Right. And I'm not complaining. I quite enjoy my life. I love my life. It's just that this is what it is. And that's my responsibility. It's my personal duty. And so I have started to finally see that personal responsibility isn't just one thing, it's every aspect of your life. It literally is sort of the all encompassing ethic of who you are. And if you're not happy with how your body looks, it's up to you to do anything about it. There's nobody else that's going to come and rescue you from your dad bod or your mom bod. I don't know which one. Um, if you're not happy with the job you have, you know, there's every single category of thing in your life, and it all boils down to you being responsible for it, or you're never going to get to the thing that you want. You're never going to recover to the place where you wanted to be. You're never going to reach the goals you have. It all comes down to you, right?
I love the example of if you don't like your body or your shape or whatever that is, right? So little little event, and it happens a few weeks back. My 5 years old has no filter. Now blame it on the French aspect, blame it on whatever, maybe he's five.
Yeah.
And he's at the grocery store with my wife. And he asked, Mom, why is there fat people and smaller people?
Mhm.
And my
Yeah.
wife explained to me, explained to me that in the row that they were in, there is a bodybuilder right beside them, right? Or a guy who's extremely buffed out. Let's go with that. And
Yeah.
he stopped and he's like, it's because they eat too much, son. And he walked away. And I'm like, he's not totally wrong, right? Because it's the best way to explain of 5 years old they eat too much.
Yeah.
And but we talked about that too, you and I. We you gain weight during that up and down of PTSD. I did too. I gained 40 pounds where I could not recognize myself. I look at a
Oh yeah.
picture and I'm like, who the hell are you? And
Oh, it makes me sick to see my before image and to
oh
think that I thought of myself as just an average guy, because I'd always been in the gym working out and exercising and doing athletics of some kind. And
yeah,
then when I finally lost weight, I couldn't believe that was the amount of weight I was carrying. I was in such denial, or I was so perfectly ignorant in just living in that sort of coasting life without even taking responsibility. Since we're
yeah.
talking about it, right?
And it's exactly it. And I'm at the
Yeah.
excuse me, I'm at the phase where I want to lose that whatever 20 left, right? Out of the
Yeah.
40. And I sat with my physiotherapist and he's like, look, I'm 55. I'm in good shape for 55 years old. And I was like, I don't want to just be in good shape. I want to be healthy and I want to look good for me. Right. And that's a
Yeah.
tangent. But what I'm getting at is at night, I have to take my CBD, THC to go to bed because that's what works right now for sleep.
Yep.
And when I'm out of that forest jungle, it's going to stop. But the munchies, we all know munchies. Those
Oh yeah.
happens, right? And God, I could cook a meal at 9:30 at night, right? Like
Yeah.
the full four course and everything. And let's bring up the soup, the bread, and whatnot. And it's up to you to say, no, I'm not going to take
Hmm.
that meal because I'm not going to get to that, and I'm not going to get to the goal. And it goes the same with therapy, which therapy is 20%. And I put the 20% medication and therapy together is 20% of your success at recovering,
Yep.
right?
I've
Uh,
never heard that stat, but I would imagine that because most of it, I think, comes from you personally, from the
yeah,
person that needs to recover, right?
yeah. So I've heard 10, I've heard 30, right? So
Yeah.
I say 20 because it's in the middle. Um, I never saw the study by all means. I'm just following up with what I've heard in therapy. But yeah, it's therapy is 1 hour a week, right? If you're just 1 hour a week, not intensely, um, then your homework is the rest of the week until next therapy, right? So if you
Yeah.
don't do your meditation, if you don't do your, let's say, your journaling, if you don't do whatever you're at this moment of work, if it's communicating, if it's just communicating or just getting up your bed when you don't feel like it,
Yeah.
because it's like saying a normal person, nobody wants to actually get up, right? I mean, we all get up because we have things to do, right? But that
Yeah.
snooze, you could press it. It's easy to press it for another 5 minutes,
Yeah.
right? And it's the same with your health, right? Like it's the same with your mental health. You have the choice to
Yeah.
say, this week I'm not going to go to therapy. I want to take a break. I believe breaks are important here and there, but if it's the break takes over your normal scheduling, then there's an issue, right?
Yeah.
And this
Well,
is where you need to be your own oversight, right? And you said it yourself just earlier, like you are your own person who should take accountability of like, okay, well, I cannot do that today. If not, it's going to deteriorate my goal, or it's going to back up my goal of 2, 3, 4, 5 years, weeks, months, whatever that is. So if
yeah.
you keep yourself accountable, you're going to get to your goal faster. And what comes after that goal is a new goal.
Yeah.
What we forget, we don't celebrate usually the goal. What we celebrate is the path that we have been through. Because every single time you have a breakthrough, that's the celebration. And
Yeah.
that's the 5 pounds you remove from your rucksack. That's
Yeah.
when it feels lighter. And that's when it feels easier than to say, no, I'm going to, like, I have to stop drinking because I fall into avoidance. So I will stop for that drink. So one day where you didn't drink, fucking great. Sorry, I'm going to have to beep this.
Yep.
But
Watch your language.
there we go. Beep. So, um, but that's the win. And the win is not
Yeah.
necessarily to reach the goal. The win is every day where you're able to take control over your desire. It is fantastic to have desire, but there's a place and a time for desire. And if the
Mm.
desire stop you from reaching your goal, then it's not a good desire. It's a
Yeah.
bad desire.
Yeah. Well, and what is a desire other than something that you are either just going to look at or you will play with irresponsibly, right?
Yeah.
You know, like it's the, like you said, it's the munchies when you're high, or
Mhm.
that you've used a cannabis product,
Yeah.
to be more technical. And I do. I'm not knocking cannabis. I think it can be a great tool for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Um, but if saying that you can't control what you eat, and I have experienced this myself, I'm not saying, you know, I never want to sound like I'm on a pulpit preaching to anybody, because these are all my own problems at the same time as I can see them and try and work on them myself. But those are all excuses.
Yeah.
We all know that. I mean, it's just a harsh truth. Oh, I got the munchies because I used THC to go to sleep. Okay, well, why didn't you just use the THC and then go to bed?
Mhm.
You know, just use it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you didn't need to smoke the joint 2 hours before bed, because you're
Yeah.
just doing 2 hours of pleasure now, right? If you're really honestly wanting to use cannabis products for a sleep aid, you just need to do it until it's kicked in. And I know this from personal experience. You don't need a 3 hour high once the kids go to bed.
Yeah. You don't need to stop in front of the
And
fridge.
I'm John, I'm not shitting on you. Here's what I want to get though. I want to get at, because I don't want people to think that I'm a, or that our goal in talking about these is to be sort of brutally, cynically honest truth mongers. Responsibility doesn't mean that you have to plead guilty to anything,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Responsibility doesn't have to do anything with you having been at fault, even. Sometimes shit happens to people. Sorry, there we go. Swearing again.
Your turn.
Sometimes things happen to people and you're just a victim. And the bad thing happened and it's really bad. There's some people experience the most traumatic, awful things in life. And this is the thing, they're not guilty of it. And taking responsibility for it does not make you responsible for what happened to you. It's just that you are becoming responsible for the consequences, because the bad guy, the bandit, or whatever the circumstances were, can't be changed. And most often, the aggressor or the person who harmed you in whatever way
Yep.
is not coming to rescue you. And even if they said sorry, that's not going to fix all of the internal trauma that you have. You know, if it was a, like for PTSD, for example, because, you know, we're both in that space.
Yep.
The, the incident that sort of catalyzed, because I mean, you experience hundreds of traumas as a police officer. I mean, it's the average is 800 in a 30-year career, 800 traumas. Um, it could be number 741 that gets you,
Mhm.
or number two, or zero. You might walk away, I would say, unscathed. I would say that nobody in that system is unscathed, but I'm going to digress. Sorry. The thing is that the thing that catalyzed and sort of like created all of the symptoms in my PTSD, that guy's never going to do anything to help me. And he never was going to. And no matter what I did to this guy, put him in jail. He was, you know, if I would have contracted hepatitis, they were going to charge him with attempt murder. Doesn't matter. Even if he was rotting in jail for 20 years and I had to take response and I had gotten sick from him, still on me to do something about it. He's not coming.
No.
Right?
No.
None of my friends can come and take away the sickness I have or the trauma I experience in my mind.
Yeah.
Only I can. And that's one of those magic bullets, man, because there's no easy formula to realize this. It just takes kind of gritting it out in life until you realize this. It's a little bit of wisdom that comes, that personal responsibility is sort of the be all and end all of how you can cater your life to feel better, to have more fulfillment and more meaning. It's just accepting that that's your life. If it happened, it happened. You don't get to swing the clock hands backwards to delete or erase anything that occurs. You just have to deal with the aftermath. And if you can accept in dealing with all of the shitty aftermath, it's just like I said, like you said and I said, it every time you do that, you put another weight down. It's like, okay, now I'm going to take responsibility for all the weight I gained because of all the shit I put in my face. Everybody knows what's healthy and what's not. You don't have to follow a diet, but everybody knows that's like 15 pounds off of your rucksack.
Yep.
And then it's going to be, I'm going to take responsibility for how I'm uh, helping take care of my spouse or the chores and responsibilities in the home or whatever. Choose whatever thing.
Yep.
Every time life gets a little easier once you make that a new pattern and a new habit and you build it into your personal ethic. Life just gets easier. And I don't know if easier is the right word.
I don't think life is easy, right? Like,
No, that's why I said it's,
yeah,
maybe it's just less difficult.
Mhm.
You know, maybe that's what it is. You know, because if you can walk around without 150 pounds on your back,
Mhm.
that's way easier than having to carry it. So
Yeah.
you put that burden down of feeling guilty and ashamed of what has happened in your life and you accept it, then you're just sort of always moving forward and it doesn't feel so awful.
Yeah. And I would add to this that quite often when we become our self-own enemy is when we put a timeline, or when we compare ourselves to, let's say I would compare myself to you, right?
Yep.
Now it becomes different. When we,
Oh,
okay, so we're
yeah.
talking about mental health, because you
Yep.
could be fine within 3 years and I'm in therapy for now 9, right? Let's go with that.
Yeah.
It's not 9, but then I'm like, how come he's having it so easily? Well, we don't know first what's going on in his head, your head. I don't know what's going on there. What did you see? What have you been through? And how is it good for you to go, or are you lying? I don't know. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
what is going on there. So I cannot start in saying, well, why this? It is way easier to look at what's going on into my own backyard, figuring out what I have to change instead of spending time into the other one.
Yeah.
And I should not spend time into the other backyard. As green as it could be, why don't I try to take care of that lawn, make it green as it's possible for me,
Yeah.
and go forward?
Yeah, that's
And
right. Yeah, man.
so because we forget about that, and I'm the worst for it. I've seen friends going to therapy for a year and going back to the job and so on and keep pushing, and I was amazed and I was a fan. I want to be them. And you know what? Sadly, some of them actually relapse later on because
Yep.
they felt so guilty. And I'm not saying it's like it's too bad, haha. I'm just saying like they thought they were okay. Something was not
Yeah.
looked into properly, or something that was not digest, or whatever it could be. But my pace is my own. I'll get there, right? It's not the turtle and the, what is it, the
The
rabbit
hair.
the
The,
hare,
the
yeah.
rabbit. Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, French hair rabbit, but
Like the hair that you got rocking right now.
yeah, don't talk about that, okay? Like, it's okay.
I had to put
But
that in there sometime during this.
I know.
Oh,
Um,
actually, maybe I should take my hat off and we can both rock some awful hair for a minute.
yeah, take accountability. Take accountability of
There
yourself
we
right
go.
there. The 80s
Look
are
like I
coming
should
back,
be
man.
part. Yeah, the 70s and 80s are coming. Yeah, here.
Yeah.
I don't
But
want to
yeah,
scare people off with that.
but it's and this is where
All
I
right, sorry.
think there's that big part where we do have to take accountability of ourselves. Now, when you said, victim, I always have the train of thought that you have the choice, or either be a victim or a victor.
Yeah,
And
that
and
makes perfect sense.
yeah, and I believe, like, don't get me wrong, I was extremely angry. I remember doing a podcast at first, and I did a few talking about my story to just raise awareness for others. I was so mad that I had been, like, uh, treated like crap from my service, and then treated like crap by the organization who was looking after our insurance and so on. And I guess if I could have burned the place, I would have. Now it's not burned, so I never did anything. And when I walked away from that part of the anger, because it was just negative and toxic, whatever energy, I
Mm-hmm.
was able to focus on my own things. And when now people are telling me, like, so have you seen what that service did, which is the service I worked in? No, and I don't care. I really don't care. If they want to dig their own hole, go ahead. It's your choice. What I know is I'm not going to dig mine.
Yeah.
And,
Well,
and yeah.
you made a great analogy, John, just a little while ago. So I want to point something out because I think you may not have even consciously thought that this is what you're speaking about, but you're talking about making your own yard green. Like worry about your own grass, don't worry about your neighbors. And that I think when you become personally responsible, it kind of strips everybody of envy, right? Like when you're talking about don't worry about your neighbor's grass.
Mhm.
Yeah. If your neighbor has a six pack and you have a dad bod, what good is it to worry about him?
Yeah.
He's also not going to give you a six pack, right?
Yeah.
And you're just going to sit there in your own backyard and get angry about it. Whereas personal responsibility sort of changes envy into like healthy jealousy or maybe just some like competitive spirit.
Yeah.
Where if you want that, you know you do because you get jealous of it. Everybody knows what they want. Like I'm not jealous of NASCAR drivers. I could give two flying frogs
Yeah.
because I just don't care about it. So I'm not
Yeah.
jealous of them.
Yeah.
But I have healthy jealousy for not bad. I have healthy jealousy for successful podcasts and successful entrepreneurs because that's something that interests me. And so jealousy is sort of an arrow pointing at the thing you want.
Mhm.
And when you tap into personal responsibility, you can switch from envy, where you want to burn your neighbor's house down and pour bleach on his grass, to I want my grass to be green. So I'm going to figure out how to make my yard awesome. And then you get to internalize your own personal growth without having to look out at the world so much as a way to gauge whether you're awesome or not.
Mhm.
Because if you don't have personal responsibility, you might always feel small. If you're not developing at somebody's level, like you said, this person goes to therapy for 3 years, this one's been in it for 9 years. Who's worse off? Who's got the worst symptoms? And then you're playing the comparison game and you get pissed off at people for, quote, doing better than you, or you might feel like people are thinking of you that way. And personal responsibility, I think, helps to erase that, where it's the outside world doesn't seem to care or matter as much, pardon me, because it's on you to deal with, right?
Yeah.
And
And the thing about the grass, so I want to bring one thing just to squeeze that in. Usually the person who are ready to complain about your doing are not the one who succeeded in. They are the
mm-hmm.
one who are stuck. Because I
Yeah, that's
guarantee
true.
you go see your neighbor who has nice grass, he's gonna tell you this is what I did and it worked.
Yep.
So the person who actually passed that level are usually willing to help. But the person who are there's a word that starts with B and finish by itching, who does that, it's super simple. It's they're stuck there. So the only thing and only view that they see when they're stuck is complaining about, well, the success of others versus the
Yeah.
person who's successful will help you. And we've seen it. We have just recently the last person on our podcast, Seb.
Mm-hmm.
He said the same thing to you, and he said the same thing to me. I always have time for you guys,
Yeah.
and I carry that man to the utmost level of respect for that reason. He wants to give as much as he can, and he will take away as much as he can. As he said in the podcast, give me your
Yeah.
pain,
I'll take
right?
your pain.
I'll
Yeah.
take your pain. I'll carry it for you. And it's not, although I believe that we should carry our own pain by all means, but if he's willing to do this above and beyond, it shows it, right? So you have the choice to be a victim or a victor. And to me, it's way easier to have a victor mentality. And because the victim just remain at the same spot. I don't want to be in the same spot. First, I can. This is where I'm standing. I have
Yeah.
I have the movement. I need to move constantly, but I don't want to remain here. My life in general made me move constantly to grow. And if you stay in the same spot, you die in the same spot, not physically, but internally.
Yeah.
Fade off because your soul needs to
Yeah.
be fed, your body needs to be fed, your brain needs to be fed. So that grass is up to you, not your neighbor, not the other one whose grass is crappy. Um, but it's also up to you to find the tools, and the tools might to be as well asking help,
Yeah.
which goes back
Yeah.
to therapy. I've heard so many people saying, I'll figure it on my own. And quite often, 2, 3 years later, they do ask for help, right? They realize that, yeah, I
Yeah.
cannot do that one on my own. You cannot go to war alone. It's not going to work. And we don't have all the tools because we're not the specialists. And I mean, we see that with specialists, which I find amazing. There's a lot of people, psychologists, therapists, who actually have to ask for help at one point
Well,
because
sure. Why not? They're just human beings, right?
there is, and they carry the weight of so many people that they
Mm-hmm.
have to unload as well eventually.
Yeah.
And I think that's
Yeah,
just brilliant.
absolutely.
And the accountability for yourself at that point to say, yeah, this week I'm going to sit with so and so because I need to unpack because it's starting to bleed out into my family, right?
Yeah.
As an example.
Well, and you make a point that has like that's the other side of the coin is, so if you're not being personally responsible, and this, like I said, this is so multifaceted. It means your mental health, it means your physical health, your spiritual, your emotional, your religious health. It will bleed out into the people around you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Seb Lavoie is such a great example. And if you're listening to this podcast and you didn't hear him on our when we recorded with him, or just find any podcast with him on it, you see the deep wisdom of somebody who has um, offloaded his rucksack, who has learned how to take personal responsibility and not ask for anything in return. He's a great example of that. And I'm not telling his story, but people can go find that out. He doesn't complain about what happened in his life. He just moves forward and accepts this is my thing.
Yep.
And then in that way, he's got this real deep empathy where he's not trying to harm anybody. In fact, he's willing to take somebody's load and put it in his own backpack.
Yeah.
Because he has got so much space. You know, we're talking about the rucksack and offloading it. It's like he has space in his now. And that's what you can become. Mm-hmm. When you become personally responsible, you can become a mentor to others. Because in the opposite, like I said, this is the opposite side of that coin of spilling out your poison on people. Once you take on personal responsibility, other people might see that in you and start wanting to be a little bit more responsible. And so you kind of create like a little ripple effect, either for good or for bad.
Yeah.
If you come home and this happened in my household and now I'm working to repair this, you come home and you're in a terrible, cranky place and you don't know how to, regulate your emotions and how to use tools you've learned to calm yourself and ease your anxiety and stress from the day. So you come home and you take it out on your family and you don't even know. I'm not saying people are guilty of this. I'm not calling everybody down for their awful tendencies. We're humans. Yep. However, there's an answer, and the solution is responsibility. You can either come home and give everybody the poison that was part of your day, or you can learn how to find tools, find a mentor like Seb Lavoie or other really awesome people. There's men and women out there that are just incredible people. You can be guided by them, or you can learn by just listening to them. And then you can develop tools so you can find peace and harmony in your little circle.
Yep.
Or you can continue to poison your own circle because it's spilling out of your own cup. And I've said that a few times, like don't spill the poison out of your own cup. Everybody's cup is full. Everybody's cup is full. And when you're not responsible for your own stuff, you're pouring it out and then you're making somebody else's cup overflow. So there's like two elements to this. Personal responsibility is for you inside and it's for you outside. It's that little circle of things around you, people and children and community groups and your job, if that's important to you. Yeah. And if you bring your responsibility to that, you're poisoning your environment. It's making it worse for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's needed in your work life. It's needed in your home life. I had a flash while you were saying this, which is, and I don't know if it ever happened to you. I had to insert a call where there was a bad injury regarding a collision because that cell phone aspect that I talked about earlier. Yeah. And then I pulled over someone right after. That's the next thing that I faced. And I yelled at the driver. I was so pissed. And I sat in my car, and then I realized I just screamed at that lady for using her phone because I've seen a young teenager being hit.
Yeah.
And so I got out of the car, did not give her a ticket by all means, but I apologize. I said, I'm sorry. I'm angry, and I'm going to tell you why, ma'am. Like, I've just attended a young teenager female who got hit, who's at the hospital right now. She's in a coma. And I want to apologize because my anger is not towards you. My anger is towards life, where it's
Yeah.
so fragile, it's so sensitive, and we don't know when it's going to be taken away, right? I didn't
Yeah.
know that little girl. I didn't know the driver. Um, but I felt at that moment that she deserved an apology because
Yeah.
I should have never lost my cool at that point. But that's an example, right? Like,
Mhm.
and I do the same with my kids, right? If I'm angry because, well, today PTSD is gonna kick my butt, and I'm gonna be angry at the world. Usually, I found my little corner and I stay safe in it, and I leave the family. But if it's a very bad day and it happens that my child who has ADHD is jumpy all over the place, uh, yeah, I can lose my cool quite fast. And I explained to him, right, I will lose my cool, and then we sit at night, and I'm like, Daddy's just not doing well today, and it's not your fault. And I think it's important, especially to kids, that we say those things. And I'm gonna push it harder on that accountability, because a kid, first and foremost, will reject himself or herself for their doing. They will think that it's
Mhm.
their fault first and foremost, because all they want to do is make you happy as a parent. They want you to be proud. Look, mom, I did a drawing. Look, mom, I made my bed. Yeah, it's normal. We do our bed every day. No, 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 you don't get it. It's a kid.
Yeah.
It's 3 years old. So it made this bed for first time or second time, or the second years, or whatever that is. So we need to also recognize our faults to be accountable to those little people,
Mhm.
because first it will teach them, but second, it's going to show them that if we lose our cool, it's not their fault. And when I teach PTSD communication part of the thing, that's one of the biggest thing that I say. One, use language they will understand, because if you write a big sentence with millions of words, they will probably just remember five of them, 5 words.
Yeah.
Second, they need to understand it's not their fault. And that's one of the biggest golden rule, because it's not, right?
Yeah.
And even saying to a kid, well, daddy did it because he wanted you to be in a safer world, this is not good. You did your job because you wanted to be a police officer. You did your job because you wanted a fireman. You did your job because you want to be in the military, not the child. Is
Yeah.
it a
That's right.
byproduct? Yes, it is a byproduct. It is a byproduct that you want to do this so your family will be in safer world, because you want to protect, you want to serve, and so on and so forth. But first and foremost, you do things for you. So we
Yeah,
need
I
to take
agree.
accountability with that. Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, I was just writing something down. But yeah, that comes right back to what we're saying, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And you can really lose sight of this, especially when you're not well. It kind of comes to the hurt people thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? You don't, it's totally ambiguous, and you're ignorant to the ways that you're subconsciously harming the people around you. And I'm gonna have to work on this with my kids throughout the rest of our relationship, because I've done that myself, right? I was very irresponsible with my emotions. And so here I was coming home or on any day off. And my go to when things were kind of getting haywire was just to scream at them, yell at them really loud, right?
Yeah.
And I can do the big booming voice because I've been doing it for years in crowds of people. As a police officer, you gotta have a big voice, and so I can kind of quiet the room with my kids. But now I have to teach them that I'm taking responsibility for this and I'm trying to get better. And what you said is they don't deserve it, because they're just victims of your own irresponsibility,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And I saw that with how, I mean, now I'm looking back, I was not obviously aware consciously that I was doing this for a very long time. It wasn't until, you know, I looked in the rearview mirror, and hindsight is 2020, as they say. So what do we got here?
So, like, I'm backwards here,
Yeah.
but why is
No, it
dad
says,
so
why is dad
mad?
so mad? Yeah.
Right. And there's the one for women. So why is mom so mad? It's an American, ex-Marine who wrote that. What's his name?
Yeah.
Seth Castle. And and my son's 5 years old. I think I've been reading that to him for now 3 years. He
Yeah.
still wants to read it, and he's still double check. So, Dad, you're not mad at me? No, I'm not. I love you, kid. Right? Like I love you,
Yeah.
son. Like I came back with a baggage. Right?
Yeah.
I've done those job. And you know the things that I say, like I did that job for you to be safe. I said it, right? So I'm not calling this because I've seen it on TV. I'm calling this because I've done the mistake of saying that to my child and then realizing after the fact, wait a minute, I didn't do that for you. I did it because I wanted to kick a door. I was excited about that.
Yeah. You
Um,
wanted to be a policeman. Right.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I left a career of 12 years old to go there, right? So he
Yeah.
was not bored at that time. It was just me and my wife. So I make it very clear that to him, and number two, that this is not their fault. Do I enjoy the job? Yeah. Am I happy that because right now, and this is linked to the first episode that we talked, my son asked me, "What do you do for work, Dad?" And Dad's now taking care of people. Right? How does he do that? Well, he talk about mental health. Right
Yeah.
now, is in grade one. So when it was time to introduce what does Dad do, that's
Yeah.
a cop. That's a cop or a military guy. Just write that down because it's not going to make sense in the class. And I don't think it's me walking away from accountability. It's me teaching to one grader what do I do for work, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's kind of sometimes those different colors where we can explain to kids so it makes sense. Um, but I will put that in a link of our podcast because it was a big help. That book helped. And it's a 15 page, I think, roughly, that we read
Yeah.
at night before bed. And it's $10 on Amazon, right?
Yeah.
Because there's mental health in those cases when we recover and so on, it will bring up to anger. It will bring up to testing our accountability, our responsibility that we have into it, right? Same
Yeah.
as I mean, and I mentioned it before in different podcasts, not this one. But when my in-laws came here, right? I didn't see them for 3 years because of COVID, and they flew in for the birth of my second child, and we sat in the living room. I sat on the floor for various reasons because I'm lower than them, so I mean, there's kind of there's not me standing on top of them, right? Like it's
Yeah.
kind of I want it to be kind of eye to eye. and and I knew that they would probably put eventually one of the kid to bed. Right in the second
Yeah.
floor, there was a door with a hole in it, and it was my fist that went through it. And I said to them, and I wanted to be clear, I'm like, your daughter was never injured. At one point, I was losing my mind, and I had to be hurt somewhere, feeling pain somewhere in my head. So I injured myself physically to not feel that for a split second.
Yeah.
Right? And because I didn't want them to be fearful for their daughter, for sure. But taking responsibility for your things is extremely important because they could have walked upstairs, saw the hole, and take conclusion of it, right? Like make their own
Mhm.
conclusion, say, oh, he tried to went through the door because she was hiding on the other side, right? Like extreme.
Yeah.
But it had to be explained. And I'm not saying this because I'm violent. I'm saying this because at that time in my crisis that I was having, that's what I did. Is it the best thing
Well,
to do?
yeah.
Probably not, right?
No.
But
But
that's
the
kind of what.
reality, John, the reality of that is that that happens.
Mhm.
Um,
Now the doors are
and
discontinued, so it's kind of a problem.
yeah,
So I
well,
need to
you'll have to
change
just
all
do
the
your
doors for the house.
might be a duct tape solution in there somewhere. But what I was gonna get at is that stuff happens. I've punched a few things. I got a letter in the mail. This is just a quick side thing, and then I want to change subjects to something that you kind of touched on. I got a letter in the mail saying that I was going to be cut off because I didn't get a doctor's note in time to my employer. And I went out on the deck and I was just like seething with anger. And I just repeatedly punched the back of the house. It was this old type of like fiber kind of siding.
Yep.
did nothing but hurt my hand. And it was a total lack of control that
Mhm.
I felt very irresponsible for. So I just wanted to say that because you took responsibility for your irresponsibility, right?
Mhm.
In order to, I mean, I think you're trying to save face with people, obviously, because I would be if I was caught doing that myself.
Mhm.
But at least you did that because you have to build up this responsibility, especially when you're trying to be responsible for your actions because you have been unwell.
Yeah.
However,
Right.
I want to change the subject because it
Yeah.
kind of evolved to this. In this is in the responsibility realm again. We can have a tendency, or we can get caught up in this thing where we wear victimhood like a costume around, right? Where that's what we become, is the victim of this. I am PTSD, right?
Mhm.
PTSD is me. And in so doing, it's almost like you're telling yourself. And I mean, there's a lot of science. Like, we could speak on the science of this. It's a really cool thing. When you internally say, I suck, you're telling every cell in your body that you suck.
Yeah.
And every day that you say, I am this person and I have PTSD, you're like accepting a bodysuit, like this proverbial thing that you wear. And I think all of us probably go through that in the initial phase.
Yeah.
It's that you have to step out of that. And you know how I was saying, like, there's a magic bullet in this where something occurs in all of us that gets us to step away from our illness and start to work to recover.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is, man. I can't speak on that. That's individual. I think everybody has their own little reason. There's a spark or a meaning or a why that comes along.
You gain
But
control of yourself, but that is, I think somehow at one point you can have a number of breakthrough, and some people never get there, right? And then there's number one. I think
well,
we
I
have to
mean, the
mention that.
people pay the ultimate price by choosing, life ending situations.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I was just saying, like, there's a point where you do finally take responsibility, and then you can start walking away from sort of cloaking yourself in victimhood,
Mhm.
right? And I think there's a grace period. I have a lot of empathy and a lot of grace for people who are at the beginning of a trajectory where they're trying to get well and they really want to talk about their illness a lot. And they really want to talk about how people hurt themselves, or how people hurt them, because I did that. And I can even go back in my social media history to like about a year and a half ago when I first started Instagram. And I can see it in the way that I wrote some poetry and some paragraph writing, which I do a lot of. And I could see it in the videos I made. And then when I started doing talking to horses, I can see the evolution through that, where I moved away from constantly being like, they hurt me and this is what's happening to me and this is what I'm doing about it, to what happened is in the rear view mirror. And this is how I'm exercising the tools I have now. And I've been able to sort of hang up my victim cloak and
Mhm.
put on like a recovery one, in process or in progress kind of, rebuilding sort of jacket.
Yeah.
And that one feels good because it's all positivity, even on the rough days, even on the crappy days. I'm not returning to victimhood. I recognize through building a resume of personal responsibility, I recognize, okay, this is not a good day, but it doesn't matter. My kids don't deserve it, and my wife doesn't deserve it, and my farm doesn't deserve it, and the people in the community I serve don't deserve it either. So I got to take control of this. I got to use my tools to try and level this off while I continue to learn to heal and get better. And so you can sort of develop that toolkit where, like, you literally are building a mental health resume to walk away from the victim mentality phase, which can suck people in
Yeah.
for so long. Because you know what? It feels good to be a victim for a while, because some people will really give you extra
Attention.
energy.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that that happened to you. Must be terrible. And you walk around the community, hey, I haven't seen you at work in a while. And every time you do that, you're reigniting that story and you're reigniting that victim feeling. And it almost gives you a bit of a dopamine hit, I think, because people are paying attention to you. So you
Maybe.
could really get
Mhm.
stuck in that. Well, I think so. I mean, I don't know if it's dopamine. I'm not sure what it is, but I can
I
remember if
I see
finally
attention.
feeling
Yeah.
good. Yeah, like the attention felt good, even
Being
though it wasn't
seen.
good. Yeah, being seen and heard. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you have to be seen and heard for healing, not just being a victim. You have to eventually, people have to see you healing. People have to see you not the same thing forever and ever.
Yeah.
And otherwise you're trapped that way, right?
You see, there's Dr. John Wellen, who's a psychologist, wrote
Yeah.
in one of his book, and it stuck with me forever. He was explaining about veterans coming back to society. So, okay, when they leave the uniform,
Yeah.
and what he says is when a veteran come back to society, when a next military goes back to society, it's like they're dumped in the middle of the forest with no map and no way to go. Why? Why are they using this picture? Number one, it's because the military is very framed. Right? The frame is very solid. You do this, and those timings, and you need to be there 15 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever that is in advance. Uh, you're kind of laid out. Even if it's a 24 hours work, you laid out your 24 hours, you know what's going to happen. There's no surprise, right? Um, because you're so prepared for everything that if there's a small thing that goes off, you'll still work it up.
Yeah.
Now, the problem that comes with this example that he kind of started to talk, and John Wellen talked about it. He's like, the problem we have when they come back to society is, well, they don't know where to go or to function because nobody tells them, right? I.e., we have our own insurance, we have our own family doctors in the military. I mean, you just go to the military hospital and so on and so forth. But the problem is not there because you can make your phone call and get insurance, right? You can make a phone call and figure who's your doctor, your family doctor. You can make a phone call to get so and so and yada yada. The problem they have is when they face society, society feels like they're so different because we're rooted different, and it functions with the first responder world as well, that they want to fix them. And quite often, and this is where I know as a veteran, I faced that. I don't want to be fixed. I functioned very well as a veteran. I've seen different things, which brings me to have a different type of awareness, right?
Yeah.
And we talked about that in the previous episode when I was saying, if I see elderly, 40 years old man, elderly, 40 years old man riding a bicycle, a BMX at midnight at night, for me, is a drug dealer because I've been seeing this as a police officer.
Yeah.
So you don't have to fix me. It's because I've been exposed to different things. Same as any immigrants who's from somewhere else in the world, they've been exposed to different things that Canadian born probably has not been exposed. So we don't have to fix them. We have to understand them and
Right.
just explain and show them that, well, here will be a bit different, right? But we don't have to fix what they've been. If they need help, sure, let's help them. But there's no fixing. And I think this is where sometimes a lot of veterans feel rejected from society because we're misunderstood. We don't need necessarily fixing. We need to be heard.
Yeah.
And this is where, as well, I find that those people who speak about the pain that they have is sometimes needed. Why is it needed? Because there's some, I would say the majority of people will not talk about it. When I released my book, man, which I don't remember what I wrote because that was in that part of my life that I have no memory, I was so angry. And in the book, you can feel it. I'm angry, man. I'm angry about everything. I'm pissed off, and people wrote me upside and down, saying, "Oh, I can relate to you." And they were all in the same phase that I was, so they could relate.
Yeah.
So I think it was a good positive to speak about it, right? The negation that I put throughout the book here and there was very good in helping others, saying, "Okay, well, I've been hiding in my basement," as an example. But I'm not alone in that process. Now, knowing this, though, you need to start and step up on the first step to go out upstairs.
Yeah.
Right now that you know you're not alone, and it's not you're not that one case out of the 10 million. Let's step on the first step and let's walk towards that recovery.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. Like there's nothing wrong with talking about what happened. There's nothing wrong with explaining the story. I completely understand, John. It's just that some people make it like a career move. They almost, it's like they try to capitalize on it.
Yeah.
Where the victimhood becomes their persona. Like I said, they wear like a costume and they will move through life being that thing. And I don't think that's a good way to live. I was living like that for a long time until I had that aha moment, like I spoke of at the beginning of this, where I started taking responsibility. Because beforehand, I was like you, I was angry. I was in a phase of just throwing it back at the world, like, you fix me.
Mhm.
What do you mean my employer's not getting me a psychologist? What do you mean WSIB is not going to fill out this paperwork for me? That I didn't do this to me. My job did. It was,
Mhm.
I knew that there was this risk associated with it, but now that I've got this, now that I've been injured, you do it. So yeah, I can empathize with that. I do have, like I said, I have a lot of grace and empathy, a lot more than others. But, and I think this probably has a lot more to do with your relationship to somebody, because you'll kind of understand their timeline.
Mhm.
So if I know a person and they've experienced something, and 5 years later they're still in the complain phase, that's 5 years that, and you're saying that you're working on it and you're going to therapy and you're growing. Well, if they're coming and they're complaining and they're saying the same story, I'm going to start questioning whether that's their new MO, or maybe their trauma is so severe that that's still where they're at. I don't know. I mean, it's not a good, perhaps that's not a good example, because it sort of like adds question to this. And that's
Yeah.
why I was wondering if you were going that way. Like, we don't really know what the person's going through, but it does seem to be that there is a selection of people that live in that victimhood. And
And some people
if
get
you're trying to
lost.
grow, you're never gonna get out of there. You can't just keep saying, "Oh, woe is me," right?
Yeah.
Because yeah, oh, woe is you, but same with every single human being on planet Earth that's existing, because existing is hard.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and everybody's gonna go through shit. So my this is my personal thought on it. You eventually have to just say, okay, I've been a victim. I have to do something about it and take responsibility. That's so much easier said than done. That's why I have a huge amount of empathy and grace for people. But the reality is that you have to come to the table with something eventually to fix yourself.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So with that, following this, I would be curious, okay, to whoever is listening to us, and I mean, you can write comments below. You can ask us questions. I want to hear, what was your breakthrough? What
Mm.
made you break through and get out of that basement, step on that first step, or seeing the first light in your tunnel, whatever picture we can put to it. I'm curious to know what it was for you. Um, and why saying it out loud? Because sometimes we do deserve a tap on our back for the work we've been doing. And quite
Oh
often
yeah,
as human,
absolutely.
we forget to do it. We forget to actually say, I've done a good job for me. It's easy to do
Hmm.
to others, but sometimes it's extremely needed to do it for ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and if we can get, we could probably air some of those answers if people were okay with that,
I love that.
to talk
Yeah.
about other people's stories of how they kind of like
Mm-hmm.
saw the light
Yeah.
switch moment where they realized, excuse me.
Or we can talk about it as well on our live whenever we're going to do a live
Yeah,
weekly, right? So
yeah.
that can be brought up as well as a subject where we're going to interact with you. So please don't miss it. Our live will be weekly. And I mean, this is when you interact with us directly, where you ask us
Hmm.
question. And I mean, I don't think we know everything. Far away from it, but if we can find it, and I think if we don't find the answer, we're gonna do our own research as well, as much as we can, in between the farming work, the kids upstairs, the kids at your place, and so on and so forth. But this is where we like the interaction,
Yeah,
and that's where it's
absolutely.
because we're doing it because we love it. We love helping people. We love to share our stories. We love to think and kind of go in this, but we're doing it as well for you guys and
Yes.
gals. So
So we're at 101. Maybe I think I started it a little bit late, but final thoughts on personal responsibility, John?
it is up to you. Nobody else will make you take responsibility.
Yeah, it's true, man.
You have to be your own surgeon major. You have to be your own boss who's going to tell yourself, no, you can. Yes, you can, to keep you on track.
Yeah.
I think that's Joko actually who said that. I'm just going to throw that out. Just in case someone called me out on it. I think Joko something like this.
Yeah. Well, on a deep and spiritual level, I'll leave everybody with this. It's something that I wrote a long time ago. I am the pond, the pebble, and the ripple. And we'll see you next week on the Raven Chronicles with Muninn and Huginn.
You know it.
Peace.
Bye.